to all the panelists who will get into in a moment for making time for this evening. Thank you to Professor Lilly, to Krista for getting this all organized. And we're excited for a brief evening before you to share a little bit more about the topic that we have scheduled for you today, which is lessons in leadership. So as Professor Lilly mentioned, my name is Jordan Hernandez, and I graduated from Loyola in 2014. So not an overly long time ago, but I do have some knowledge and some career length under my belt. I've been a communications marketing professional for about 12 years now. And right now I currently hold a title of Director of Content Marketing at Citizen Relations. I also am a influencer, if that's what you want to call it. I have a book. I review books on Instagram under a page called Completely Booked, and I'm also a small business owner with my sister, who also graduated in 2014. She's on the panel today. A small business owner of a sweets and treats shop, along with a plethora of community service and other events and just organizations. So what I'm actually going to do now is turn it over to the panel to be able to introduce themselves, including their names, their current title, the company they work for, and their graduation year. So Marissa, you actually appear first in my screen, if you don't mind kicking us off.
Thank you so much, Jordan, and thank you to all for being here tonight. My name is Marissa Brainey. I'm a television host, an on-air lifestyle contributor, and a media coach. I'm also an entrepreneur. I own my own business. It's called MBM Media, and I do a lot of work with consumer lifestyle brands in the television space. But I'm also a former news anchor. So I was a news anchor for more than 15 years before transitioning into being on this side of TV and becoming a business owner. I graduated Loyola in 2004 as a communications major, and I had a journalism specialization at the time. Thanks so much for having me.
Great. Over to you, Joanna.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jordan, and nice to meet everyone here. I'm Joanna Havlin, Loyola alumni, class of 1999. So yes, closing out the last part of the 1900s. I've spent my career at the intersection of media, data, technology, and most recently AI. I wrapped my second startup coming off of many years at Oracle, which has really been one of the most rewarding chapters. I'm currently in transition and actively exploring my next move. So I'll be honest about that today because I think navigating uncertainty is something everyone here will face at some point in the career and just an important leadership skill to be cultivated.
Great. Thank you, Joanna. Joelle, would you like to share next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Joelle Hernandez, class of 2014, a graduate of Loyola. I studied journalism and communications. My specializations were journalism and advertising, and I am currently the director of marketing at the Local Girl Media Group, which is a hyper-local news and media outlet, and like Jordan mentioned, also co-owner of Double Dough here in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Awesome. Thank you. Nick, will you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. It seems like we have a lot of class of 2014 grads here, including myself as well. Yes, I also graduated with a degree in communications and marketing from Loyola in 2014. I actually have 3 degrees from Loyola. I feel like I was on a retainer over the last number of years, decided to go back for an emerging media master's degree in 2018, and then also an MBA a few years ago as well. So I guess I just can't get enough of Loyola education. But having said that, I've spent the bulk of my career really building brands, everything from beverage alcohol to financial services, as well as health and fitness. But the bulk of my career has really been in beverage alcohol, marketing and sales.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Debbie, are you able to share a little bit more?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Debbie Coffey. I'm class of 1993. And I'm a chief communications officer for Atlas Air Worldwide. We're a global air logistics company. I spent the bulk of my career in the beauty industry. So I tell everyone I went from eyeliner to airliner. So it was quite a pivot there. But it was, proud Loyola alumni, and the skills I learned right there have served me very well. So look forward to getting into the discussion.
You, Debbie, and from Krista, we have some class of 1993 love in the chat. Vince, I have you next in my screen if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Taking myself off mute, which is hard for me. I'm Vincent Krasulik. I am the CEO of Martini Media. Martini Media is a boutique luxury digital firm based in New York and LA, and I've been doing it for a little while. I am a class of 1994, so I probably got just as many stories as Debbie and eventually Amy, and I'm willing to share a couple of them today.
Thank you so much. And for our panel rounding out our introductions, Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi there, Amy Pagano. I want to say that I was class of 2014, but that would be untrue. So I've been outed here. I'm class of 1993 with some of our other grads on this call. I lead talent acquisition or recruiting globally for VML, which is a large advertising agency, and it's part of the WPP network, which many I'm imagining folks know Ogilvy and some of the other great brands in the advertising communication space sit under WPP. And I've had quite a few roles over the past 20 years in the space around talent. So hopefully what I would love to talk to everyone today about is top of mind for all is careers in this marketing and advertising communication space.
Thank you so much, panelists. What we'll do now, students, we'll kick off with one warm-up question that I'll ask every panelist here, and then we'll be able to turn it over to you all to really drive the conversation. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, today's panel is on lessons in leadership. So as leaders in all of our respective fields, while everyone here has some sort of background in communications to some degree, we do have a diverse, spread here on the panel. What is one thing you learned at a young age about leadership, and how does it still impact you today? Nick, do you want to kick off?
Sure. I would say from a leadership perspective, it really always boils down to just never stop learning. I think what I've realized in my career that spans also 12 years is that I've really become as much of a mentee as much of a mentor. And I think at some point, usually leaders, they sometimes feel like they always have the answers. And I'll be the first to say that sometimes I think I have all the answers, that I'm quickly humbled shortly thereafter. So I think what I've realized is that you should never stop learning. I think it's a testament to, furthering your education from perhaps graduate programs, but also being willing to taste different industries, be part of different teams. And when you surround yourself with new opportunities on a regular basis, I think you often be a sponge automatically. So when I think about leadership, I think about learning, and that could be teaching others, but even also having a willingness to always learn yourself as well.
Thanks, Nick. Debbie, you want to share next?
I actually was thinking the same answer that Nicholas was about to or gave, but the other thing that came to mind, and actually Joanne and I were talking about this earlier too, relationships, relationship building. When you think about leadership skills, that is so core to it. You need to be able to have strong relationships with the people on your team, but also with your colleagues, your partners, maybe your clients. And that, the test I give everyone that I interview is, would I be willing to be stuck in an airport during a layover with this person? And if the answer is no, they won't get the job. So really having an ability, in addition to all the comm skills, but having that ability to really relate to people is so important.
Debbie. And Amy, your response?
I'm going to build off that one because clearly in my career, relationship building is everything. But for anyone in any industry, I think as a leader, you have to not only be able to build those relationships, but also maintain those relationships. And always remember, when you're starting out, you never know where people are going to end up. So when you're leaving a place or when you're working there, always keep in mind you want to leave a good you want to leave on a high note. You want to have a good impression, for the future. So I would say it's still under relationship building, but that's something that's really important in leadership and learning, which has already been pointing out. pointed out.
Sure. Thank you. And Joanna, in such a cutting edge field that you're in, what is something that you learned so long ago that still stays with you today?
Yeah, and I learned, and this probably didn't happen more till my mid-career, that leadership isn't about having all the answers. I think early on, I put so much pressure on myself to know everything, know every answer to every question, every answer to every following question. So it's kind of that classic imposter syndrome. But when I really started to get comfortable was when I started to really think about, you know what, it's okay to not know everything. So having that comfort to not know it all and just really listen to folks. So, like the tell me more, asking the right questions, making people feel heard. But that led to me really understanding what would be needed. But just again, having more of that comfort and knowing that you can always get the right answer later. You don't need to know it all. You're going to work with a lot of different people across a lot of different teams. So, borrowing other people's expertise and bringing other people in when you need it is okay. So, that's probably something that I learned early on.
Or and Marissa, what would you say to that question?
I'm going to piggyback off of that as well as what Nick said. So I think, yes, learning, but also not being afraid to not be the smartest person in the room, even as a leader. I think strong leaders recognize and really play to other people's strengths to benefit the team. All of the leaders that I can think of in my career that I admire and look up to and try to emulate in certain ways did that very well. They recognize that they might not be the best person at this, but someone they hired is. And so tap into that person's strength and, kind of lift the whole team up. I also see that a lot as an entrepreneur now myself in how I spend my time. There are certain things I'm just not good at. And those are the things I outsource or ask for help for or pay to have someone help me with because it's worth it to spend my time and energy on my strengths. So it kind of goes both ways. I think when you're working as a team or if you do get the opportunity to work for yourself, as a leader in either of those, just really, again, asking questions, not being afraid to not know the answers, not feeling that sort of uncertainty about not necessarily knowing. I think there's real power in that, and it can be really, really uplifting for not only your team but your career as a whole.
Great. Joelle, you want to share?
Yes, I would say leading with a sense of sort of empathetic authority. And, if you are in a leadership position, whether it's an actual title or if you have kind of naturally gravitated toward a leadership role, which I feel like is pretty natural for Loyola students once you get into a situation where you may be amongst non-Loyola students, you kind of naturally rise to that position, whether you have a title or not, but leading with a sense of empathy and understanding that people are bringing their full selves to work, whether they let you in on that portion of their lives or not. And everyone is coming with something, whether it is something that you feel is small or unimportant, but is the biggest thing in the world to them, or vice versa, and understanding that people have things that they are carrying along with them. And if you can understand that and you can lead in a way that recognizes that people may have other things going on in their lives and will have other things going on in their lives without, some people will let you in, some people won't. So you don't necessarily have to get personal, but understanding that you can have an empathetic side to your leadership and to your authority.
Awesome. And to close out of this question, Vince, will you share?
Sure. So you said the question was what, early, right? Because I'm still
Yes,
learning and got a
absolutely.
million comments to being a good leader. That wasn't your question. You said, what did I learn early?
Really, that has stayed
My
with you,
earliest.
correct? Yes.
When I apologize for doing a little bit of sport here. I'm not that sporty, but when I played sport, I was the captain of the team and I picked up the equipment. So pick up the equipment if you're the leader. Don't ask the other people to do it. If you can do it, they can do it. And so I learned early on that, you know, be a bit of Nike and just kind of do it. So that was probably my first introduction to how to be a leader.
I like
That's
that. I'm
great
taking
advice.
notes from everyone here too.
Yes. Well, what we want to do now is actually turn it over so that we have as much time as possible. If we need to get into other questions, I'm prepared, I'm armed, but I would love for the students to be able to really share what they want to learn from the panel. So students, if you can unmute, I know these classrooms are so high tech now, so I don't know what the unmute situation looks like. But if you can unmute and if you have a question directly for someone on the panel, feel free to ask them directly, or if it's something that you want everyone to answer, you can feel free to ask that as well.
Okay, I think we have a question or two up here, and then we could see if Ben has any student questions down in M009.
Great.
So,
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Thank you all for being here today. I had a question specifically for Nick. You mentioned how you got many degrees here at Loyola, one being the emerging media master's degree. And I was wondering how you found that helpful, and like what skills and like what knowledge you developed from that program to kind of help you in your career. And if you kind of like went into that straight from like undergrad, or did you take some time before going into that program? Just because it's going into like grad school, something I'm considering maybe in my future. So I would like to know how that kind of set you up. And anybody else on the panel has insight on this.
Before Nick answers that, can you introduce yourself and what year you are?
Oh, sorry, yes. I'm Cass. I'm a senior communications and visual arts major.
So I'll answer the second part of your question first because I think it segues into the first part of your question better. So I decided to go back for the emerging media master's degree 4 years after graduating from Loyola. And at the time, I was actually in like a little bit of a crossroads in my career. I had been with the first company that I was working for out of Loyola for about 4 years, and I was getting a little bit antsy ultimately. I felt like I was hitting a little bit of a ceiling in my current role at that company. I was ready to taste a different industry, and that goes back to what I was talking about before about always be learning. And I think it was Dr. McGee, who I want to say is still part of Loyola's staff. She had always been a mentor to me as an undergrad, and I got in touch with her, and she was telling me more about the program. It felt like it made sense to do that in conjunction with a career change, and that's exactly what I did. So I went to go work for a different company while pursuing that degree. And I think the first part of your question was, what did I learn? Well, ultimately, that program really centers around digital and social media, which is the direction I wanted to take in my career at the time. First company, I was very communications, kind of advertising heavy. And the pivot that I wanted to make in my career at the time was more digital and social media related, really digging more into paid social and building out brand campaigns and digital ecosystems and more integrated marketing type of roles. And so that was very complementary to that move in my career at the time. So I will say, without being like too PR here, grad school was not really on my radar after undergrad. Like once undergrad was complete at Loyola, I was like, all right, I'm all done with school now. And it was really that program, that timing in my career where it made a lot of pragmatic sense and ultimately did pay a lot of dividends, both in that role and then further on in my career. So I think that answers both your questions.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nick, I think Professor Lilly, you had another question in the room.
I did have a follow-up for others on the panel, thinking along the same lines, like can you tell some stories of early kind of unexpected career changes? Like, in communications, we have our three areas, but there's so many different jobs and different fields within there. And I think a lot of times students, myself included, I was history poli-sci. I never ever really thought at that point I would be a college professor, right? So tell us about some stories of how things shifted early in your career, and now maybe you're doing something a lot different than you thought that what you were going to be doing.
All right, Amy.
I was going to say I can start with that one because I'm not completely a communications major. I was a history major, and I thought I wanted to go to law school. So right out of Loyola, I had done an internship with a judge in the Baltimore area, and I was thinking of applying to law schools, and that was my plan. But when I graduated, I couldn't exactly afford it right off the bat. So I got a job in a recruiting agency to save up money to go forward and pay for law school. And in doing that, I discovered I kind of like this area that I'm in. And then I switched over to go to grad school in an engineering school, which offered a Master of Science and had an HR track. So it's like the quantitative side of HR. But the point I'm making is I landed in a completely different industry and doing something that I was not ever expecting to do. So it is relevant, whether you're in communications or any sector, is really just that. And maybe it's part of the leadership question earlier, is that you just have to be open to trying different things, because your journey may take you in a way that you weren't expecting. Not only just one job to the next, but just purely, you never know where you're going to land. And sometimes it's the best thing that could possibly happen. So I don't know if that's a good story to tell right now, but I think maybe it is, because you need to be open in this, economy and environment and everything.
I'm with you, Amy. I was a writing major, and I thought I wanted to write, and then I decided I wanted to be written about. So that sort of changed things. But I have different careers and different paths, and I did want to go to law school as well, and that just, you know, so what you really should do is think that you want to go to law school, because you won't, and then you'll find your path. That's the message for today.
And I can build on that a little bit. So I studied communications, specializing in advertising, and then I had a business minor. And then as I graduated, I connected with another Loyola alumni who was working at a media agency doing more of the media buying. And so I didn't even understand this whole process or business that existed, where it was buying the media that actually got the advertising to be placed. And actually, that's where I met Vince. But I was
Yep.
working in the magazine buying side. So when you saw ads in a magazine for a particular client, my role was to help kind of facilitate that process. And so I think I thought I would be the one creating the ads, like being in the creative side of advertising, but turned out I was on the other end of it. And then the other pivot that I made, I would say kind of coming out of more magazine and traditional media buying, I then pivoted as social media was starting up, went to a social ads API company, a technology company, as Facebook and Twitter, X, Meta, Snap were all launching their advertising ecosystems. And so pivoted from traditional magazine media buying to going on the sales side to sell technology to help enable social media advertising. So that was a complete pivot into a completely different area. But it goes back to a lot of what the panel discussed, which was around relationships, building, maintaining relationships with people, because you never know where folks are going. And was able to kind of get inroads on the other side through a colleague that I had worked with in my prior role.
Mm.
So I can chime in with some of my experiences quickly too before we move to the next question. But what I've loved most about my career in communications is I've been able to have so many different building blocks of it. So even within communications, I started with that external PR, then I brought on the internal communications to employees. Then it was social media, then it was sustainability reporting. And then there was a lot of exposure in my career with philanthropy, and did a ton of work using our spokespeople to raise money for women's causes. So in my last job, we were the largest corporate supporter of women's causes. I had the good fortune of traveling the world with Reese Witherspoon, raising awareness for breast cancer and domestic violence, working with other celebrities like Fergie and Patrick Dempsey, and a lot of fun celebrities who were in it though because they wanted to do well by doing good. And so I think that that's something, as you think about like unexpected pivots, when you think about straight communications, you don't always think about all of those ripple circles that kind of revolve around that core set.
You all for your responses. I think that's gives us such a diverse perspective of all the places that the communications world can take us. And I'm sure there's students in there that are maybe a little bit nervous about the pivots, but hopefully very leaving very hopeful and inspired about all of the different directions that we can go. Definitely want to turn it back to the students for another question.
Hi,
Yeah, great. Go.
I'm a senior here at Loyola, communications and media major, specializing in advertising PR as well as journalism. I wanted to ask about how artificial intelligence has affected your careers right now. I know it's an emerging trend using it. So I wanted to ask like how you use it in your job and how you use it as a leader on your teams.
So let's turn to our resident expert first, Joanna, and then we can pivot to a few others. Perhaps Joelle, she works in media, writing articles and things like that, as well as Marissa.
Thanks, Jordan. And great question. I think AI comes up in probably everybody's sort of job and their life. And so the way that I've utilized AI and how I really got immersed into it was in my last job at a startup called Scope 3, where it was starting off as a media company bringing sustainability and sustainable practices in media buying. So again, kind of harnessing some of that purpose-driven work. And we got a lot of questions around the impact of AI with sustainability. And so the company actually pivoted to create an agentic advertising platform where then I was then working with clients, brands, and agencies to build brand agents using prompts so that they can better target within their digital campaign. So the areas that I sort of deepened my knowledge and leadership within AI was, in practicality, how do AI agents sort of fit into the digital media buying process to reach their intended audiences in relevant content. And then the other part of that was I actually was building AI agents for my own internal use cases to maximize my own sales productivity. Being in sales as a startup, what are some of the ways that I could cut down sort of the more mundane tasks to give me more time to be out with clients. And so built different agents to help with my just general sales workflow, as well as the team's workflow to be able to kind of take advantage of that. So I would say AI really can come into so many different areas. And I think agentic AI, which gets into more of the decisioning, gets really exciting because that can bleed into a lot of different areas.
Dang. Joelle, you want to share?
Sure. Yes. So, kind of to piggyback back off of what Joanna has said, AI has been a part of various areas of my career. I would say over the last 3 to 4 years, I would say is really when I started kind of seeing it. So, prior to my current role, I was on the commerce partnership team at what's now called People Inc. It was Dotdash Meredith when I was there. So, I mostly worked with People Magazine and Style, Travel and Leisure, and Food and Wine. But during my time at Dotdash Meredith, they actually, the company as a whole, created a partnership with OpenAI in that any content that was being sourced from any of the brands in the portfolio, so any of the magazines that's owned by People Inc., especially more on the recipe side of things. So if you're going on, say, ChatGPT or anywhere and you're searching, what should I make for dinner tonight? And an all recipes recipe or a Southern Living recipe comes up. They had a partnership, created a partnership with OpenAI to one, have that information pop up, and then also for it to be properly sourced. So that was an interesting to kind of see that unfold. It wasn't directly on my team, but it was something that we were kind of navigating through as a company. In terms of some of the things that were used on my team at People Inc., it was kind of this like crossroads because a lot of the products that were written about were tested by testers, which were mostly employees. So we would test anywhere from, I was a tester, I was on the fitness beat when it came to testing. I don't know, I am into fitness, but I tried my hardest to not land there as a tester. I really wanted the food and beverage testing, but that didn't work out. So more so testing like yoga mats, yoga pants, sneakers, which was a great cost savings. So making sure that we are incorporating actual real human insights into these articles that then the writers would actually use AI to help produce, but the actual human element was added in. In my current role, we're using it more so because we are a very small team. There's only 5 of us full time. So a lot of us are doing the roles of what would normally be multiple people. We are using it, like Joanna said, for a lot of the more mundane tasks that would normally take lots of time. So for me on the sales side, prospecting, also using AI tools for kind of in addition to like a mail merge situation. So that if I'm emailing lots of people to reach out to for sales, I'm doing that. And then the editorial team is also using it for production of articles on our website. We're usually producing about 15 to 20 articles per day across the 4 websites. So we would have traditionally 2 or 3 interns working only on production. So now we have 1 intern working pretty much solely on production. And then the others are able to do even more to get more done during the day. So it's not necessarily replacing people. We have the same number of staff members, the same number of interns. We're just able to get more done during the workday.
Thank you. Marissa, I would love for you to feed in to this conversation as well.
Yeah, and I have like a completely different kind of perspective and thought on this because I'm not working in the corporate world, so to say, in a day-to-day basis. Now I work with a lot of different companies, and it is interesting to see how different brands and companies are using AI. But part of the work I do, in addition to appearing on TV for brands as like a spokesperson, a host, a lifestyle contributor, I also am a media coach. And so this is what I wanted to talk about a little bit in how I use this for my clients and also how I see my clients struggling with using this. Because as a media coach, I help small business owners, teams, and companies show up effectively on video. And so that can look like corporate media training, where I'm training full teams, C-suites, CEOs, how to convey their messaging in a more concise, compelling, and confident way on video. But then I'm also working with solopreneurs like myself who don't have a whole staff to weigh in on that. And so they're looking to use AI to do things like social media, scripting out things for them. And then AI is often spitting back things that are very much lacking in that human element. And so one of the things I think that will not be replaced by AI, because it can't, is the human nature of storytelling, right? We don't necessarily tell every single story in a very cookie cutter, perfectly punctuated, bullet points, very sort of like type A way. That's not how humans work. And so the human aspect of storytelling is something that I think brands will even more so, and small business owners and people, right, as our own personal brands, we'll even have to rely on that human element of error and struggle and all the roadblocks and pivots way more so now, because we are bombarded with so much content that is AI powered. And so that, I believe, will be the big differentiator in thought leadership, in really leaders of companies who are just looked at in a different way, is the ability to storytell and to do that strongly, and know when to use AI to kind of help you with that, but not have it replace your human experience. So, like, I think a really good example is, the big arch, the McDonald's CEO trying the burger that went viral and everyone was talking about it. It was because he looked like a robot and sounded like a robot. And it was like, oh my God, where is this guy's media training? This is so cringe. Like, that was a moment where I think it seemed like it was very much something that an AI chatbot scripted out for him and wrote out. And they were like, okay, go do this, his team. And to me, it just was a really good example of like, that's not what people are looking for in branded stories. Is they're looking for true stories. And so I think the more we can prompt AI and maybe use AI to, do the research element of it, like what are the biggest questions people are asking financial advisors? Yeah, right. So like one of my clients, financial advisor, that's a way I would suggest using AI, is to kind of get at the heart of what people want to know, and then use your own personal experiences and your own storytelling and your own humanity to then provide a unique answer. So I think I was a little all over the place in that, but I have a lot of thoughts,
No,
as you
it's
can
helpful.
tell, and sort of come at it from a different way than a lot of others. So
You have a very human answer, I would say. I think
good.
that's the hit the nail on the head with that for sure.
I did want to follow up on Caitlin's question and maybe ask a more pointed version of that question. Specifically, Amy, I'm very curious, and I'm sure students are super curious as well. What are some AI related skills and proficiencies that are becoming a sort of codified part of the hiring space?
Mhm.
Meaning, what sort of thresholds are you looking for people that have time to develop
Yeah.
and to clear?
Yeah. So I think the first thing, and this is just going right off of what Marissa was saying, at VML specifically, we have something called a human first approach. So with our internship interns that we're looking for currently, or anyone coming into an early talent space, and it's actually any level. One of the things we're looking for are transferable skills. So the AI itself, you need to know how to use certain, you need to know how to use the tools and how to use it in your role. So those roles are evolving. But what we're looking for is storytelling skills, communication skills, problem solving skills. What's the problem? What am I trying to solve here, and how can I do that? The ability to use data and analytics to lead to the storytelling. So again, AI can help you with that. I mean, just the other day, we took a bunch of data spreadsheets and dumped it into Copilot and said, show us the trends that this is showing with offers and compensation and where we're paying over and under. And in seconds, that came back. That would have taken my team a very long time to do. Okay. So I think some of those, that's what I would consider to be transferable skills. And then it's going to differ by what it is you're pursuing. But really it's thinking of how can you amplify those skills using the tools. So if you're in creative, or I mean, there's a ton of different ones. You have Canva, you have Gemini. I mean, there's so many now, but it's really thinking about what are you trying to get out of that experience. You need to be familiar with them, so go out there and experiment. I'm personally in Coursive and LinkedIn Learning and all of this stuff to try to use different applications and tools. But you have to think, why am I doing that? And what am I trying to get out of it? And at the heart of it, you still need to be able to build relationships with people, communicate with people, tell a story. And I mean, those skills aren't going to go away. And that's what we are looking for. So when we're interviewing people, we are asking, like I have the 10 interview questions here I can share with the team after with the group is, one of the things we're asking people interviewing is, how are you using the tools? What do you see changing? So basically the questions that have been asked here that each of the panelists who responded, they were saying, here's how I see this changing. Here are the tools I'm using. I mean, we're just asking people outright because you don't have tons of people who are experts in this space. It's still evolving.
Yeah, I'm just jumping on this just where you guys this is a panel on leadership, and this is a question on sort of interview and maybe getting a job. And I would be remiss if I don't remind or not remind, maybe you don't know this, but energy is it. That's it at your level, actually at any level. Be somebody, show up and have energy and have a presence. You want to talk about AI? Go for it. You want to talk about the Orioles? Great. But the amount of people who lack energy that I see, I've interviewed thousands of people, thousands. And it's not even my job, it's Amy's job. I just encourage you. And if you don't have energy, get some. Go ahead, go get it. Practice in the mirror. I don't know. But that's the number one hiring. And I hate to sound like a New Yorker, but that is the number one qualification. Just have energy, be inquisitive. I saw someone in the audience who was taking notes. I was like, I'll take her. Like, just be present. So, and then my second comment to the AI part is, yeah, we're all going to have to use it, but right now in the media space, it's the ability to take something that's so data driven and so complex and make it readable quickly. The best example, we use Salesforce. I asked ChatGPT. I took every call we've ever made in 2025, and I put it through Salesforce and I said, why do we win? And it gave me a list of one of the most important reasons why you have created a relationship. Oh, so we win when we create a relationship. Great. Thanks, AI. Got it. But it's true. But they could say, like, of all the things you've won, you went on 20 calls for that particular account or 7 calls. And so we created some kind of relationship. And that was the number one takeaway. Now, I'd have to scour thousands of sales calls in a given year, but AI gave me that answer in 3 seconds. So
So it's
I'll leave you with
figuring
that.
out how to use the tool, and
Sorry?
what you just said, in it's figuring out how to use the tool also. So yeah, and asking it the right questions that can, deliver those kind of answers. So that's, I guess it goes back to problem solving and being able to figure out how to use the tool in the right way.
And I think I just wanted to add one thing, and that is with your education at Loyola, having the critical thinking skills is huge and I think sets you apart because you are going to be the human that has to interpret, still have that critical thinking and like POV on things. And as someone who is in the active job search, the way that I used AI, maybe this is a little counterintuitive, but I created this sort of personal portfolio in Lovable. It was actually on International Women's Day at this vibe coding event. But what I wanted it to do was not only just showcase, my sort of accomplishments. People will have your resume, they will have your LinkedIn, but this was a way to really humanize me. So who would me as a person be on your team? And so created certainly the stats of like what I've been able to achieve at a high level, but also here's some fun ways to get to know me. Here's a little like fun little quiz, hot takes. Here's my journey. Here's some of the things that like, my family has said about me in a fun way. But just to again emphasize that personability, who you are as a human. But I used AI to create that, and I use that, as like more of like a follow-up. But it shows that you're, a practitioner, a builder, someone who's like working with the tools and can like, hopefully have fun with it and showcase, some bit about your personality too, because that's hard to come through, in a 30-minute interview.
I know the students may have more questions, but I do want to, something that I would love for the students to hear, and this question is for both Debbie and Marissa, given that you're both in, or have been, Debbie, I know you mentioned that you were in beauty earlier, very highly visible, very highly sought after career paths for both of you, maybe for students in the room and I know if I was a student in the room, I would be clamoring over everything Marissa said just because of what she has done. So I say that to say that it may be hard in those spaces in both television as well as beauty to come in as an entry-level student or entry-level professional and make yourself a leader immediately. In those spaces particularly, but maybe more in the more sought after spaces that I'm speaking about in general. What can you do as an entry level? You're 22, 23 years old. It is June 1st, let's just call it, and you're starting your first job. What can you do to stand out as a leader?
I can't see Marissa, but Marissa, would you like to go first, or do you want to punt to me to go first?
Sure, either one. I'm happy to take this, and then I'll pivot to you. I will say, television is one of those unique fields that because of the nature of how competitive it is, really in any aspect, it's just a hard to break into type of field. Now, when I started, I was in journalism, so I knew I wanted to do TV news. From the time I was a little girl. I took the very first job I got in TV, and it was a 3-day a week, one-man band reporting job in upstate New York. Moved there, knew not a soul. It was the first job I got and I took it. And that was a piece of advice that a mentor had given me actually at a TV station in Baltimore. I had a few internships, but I interned at WMAR. And she said, it doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter what the job is, like you take it. And, things have changed a lot since then, but I still give that advice to every single person I meet who wants to be in television, because it is just one of those fields, and not every field is like this, but it is just one of those fields that is very hard to break into later. So if you can do anything to be in it, if you want to be in television or if you want to work in television, if you could get any kind of job working in television, you should take it. And you should learn what you can along the way. And this goes back to, I think, what we said very early on. I knew at 22 years old as a reporter that I did not know anything. Like, it was very clear. My very first day reporting was the 2004 election. And it was very evident to me that I knew nothing. As soon as I stepped into that newsroom, I was like, whoa, I have a lot of work to do. And I think if you can be humble in that moment and recognize that, you're already ahead of some other people, particularly in a field that is competitive, that is very visible, that has a lot of egos. There's a lot of personalities in TV. And so just being able to be humble and recognize and be willing to lift up the equipment, as Vince said, which I did much of. I mean, take those sort of, harder assignments, be the person who is there early, is well researched, is willing to step in when shit hits the fan, because it always does. That was the way I distinguished myself as a leader, even though I had people working in the newsroom with me who had been doing it for 30 years. How could I possibly be there? And that's true for every single job. When you're in an entry level position, you are automatically working with people who have leaps and bounds more experience. So recognizing that leadership isn't about how much you know or how much you can do. It's really about, just having that good energy, that good attitude, that willingness to work, that humbleness, and really being able to say, like, I have a lot to learn. Please teach me. And being that person who steps up and isn't afraid to raise your hand and say that, I think automatically kind of gets you into that like leadership mindset and helps you step into that even when you don't know a lot. So that's my 2 cents on that. Debbie, I'll pivot it over to you.
That's great. I love that answer, Marissa. I think so. I'll go in a slightly different direction. You covered like that leadership side of things. I'll get kind of tactical about building a career in beauty and how did I do that? I took the agency route. And Amy talked about WPP being that conglomerate of agencies, or VML. I love agencies. I love seeing, when I look at candidates today, I first look to see, have they worked at an agency? That is the best training ground. You are surrounded by people who do the same thing that you do, but for many different clients. And so you get exposed to many different industries. And so for me, my first job out of Loyola was, and I love what Marissa said, like I just took the first job I could take, and it just happened to be at an agency. And my clients was Nivea and Beiersdorf. I don't know if you all know Nivea was a beauty brand, Beiersdorf Eucerin. And my other client was Tums Antacid. And so I would be bringing home at night, all the magazines, all the beauty magazines, and I'd be bringing home the New England Journal of Medicine to study up on the antacid and the pharma. And I quickly found out, and this is no judgment to anyone here who wants to go into pharma communications, but for me, I had more of an affinity to the beauty magazines in my bag than I did to the New England Journal of Medicine, which leads me to the next point: is how do you establish yourself as an expert? It's really great if you can like what you do. Like if you can find an industry or a client that you have this personal passion for, then that you can become expert in, then that will make you, that will really help you to be more successful. And the last thing I'll wrap up with is, when going for those types of jobs in a consumer products good company, especially in an image driven category like beauty or fashion, keep in mind that when we're looking at candidates, it really is someone who knows brand. And so make sure that you are first and foremost a caretaker of your own brand. And what I mean by that is, your brand is your LinkedIn page. That's your storefront. That's how people are making these snap judgments about you, including LinkedIn's algorithms, by the way, who, that all of their machines behind the ground who are crawling through, to find candidates for the right jobs. but be sure to be a real a careful caretaker of brand you, so that you're projecting the image that you want to project. That's so important. It was, my husband was just telling me the other day that he was reading something that recruiters were starting to tell candidates that they should dress professionally for their interviews. And that no one should be told that. I mean, and it was interesting that that was actually a statement on an interview or on a job description, for these, if
Post
applying. And
COVID.
so,
I'm just
okay. Oh,
saying, post COVID,
yeah,
it's a
Amy,
real
you probably,
because
yeah,
we have
you
people
probably
even
see a
on our
lot.
team that are used to working from home, and they'll come on to the meetings and have sweatshirts on
T-shirt,
and look like they're in their
T-shirt drives
pajamas.
me
And
crazy.
we've had to address that and say, you need to, again, we call it brand you as well, but we say you need to reflect what you want respect, you need to reflect a certain look, which is that you took time to come on this call, that you were prepared and you thought about it. You can't just roll in your pajamas because you're working from home. But I think it's a COVID. It's seems to have been on the rise in COVID, and then maybe now with working from home, it's become more prevalent. So I'm not shocked
Yeah.
that we've had to put that out there and say it. But yeah, for the folks on this call, definitely that's important. Dress to impress.
Aligned.
Thank you
Yeah.
both so much for that intel. I think we have time for probably one or two more student questions, if there are more questions in the room. We will. I'm a book club
We have
host, a
one.
virtual book club host. We embrace the awkward silences.
We do have one.
We do have one. Yes, thank you.
I was wondering, how do you guys manage in the workspace like conflicting priorities and visions within the team? How do you open up that conversation?
So that's a good question. Joelle?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and it's something that comes up. I'm sure everyone probably can think of a million situations where this comes up. It comes up pretty much all day, every day. I work at, like I said before, I work at a hyperlocal news outlet. We're a very small team, but we do cover a lot of ground. So, of course, I'm not on the editorial side, but I am in a lot of the editorial meetings. I'm on the more on the sales, sponsorship side of things, which that does have its conflicting views, especially when it comes to clients. We like to say we know it's best when it comes to what our audience wants to see, wants to hear, how they want to hear it, how they want to see it. And of course, sometimes that does conflict with how a client wants to portray their brand. So pretty much every day, I'm telling a client, of course, in a tactful and professional way of, no, that's not how we're going to do it. We're going to do it our way. And it's going to end up working out better. Of course, like I said, there are tons and tons of ways to say that. But on the news side of things, we don't necessarily cover things that are political. Of course, we could get into the argument that everything is political, and that's a conversation for a different day. But we don't necessarily cover things that may skew political, even if that is, sometimes it may impact how we cover the news. And our team does have quite a diverse view. Thankfully, most of us lean a certain way, but we do have quite a diverse view when it comes to what we're going to cover and how we're going to cover it, which sometimes can be different from what our readers and what our audience thinks, which sometimes we find out in real time in Instagram comments, which is always fun. So I would say just kind of staying true to yourself, and staying true to why, and also having a why, right? If you're in a meeting setting, whether if it's with your colleagues or with a client, and you have a particular stance that you're taking, you can take that stance so long as you have a valid reason to back it up. I think if you're coming in with just kind of, I just want to do this just because I want to do it, that's when your viewpoint is not valued and kind of diminished in a setting, especially in a corporate setting. But if you have a reason as to why you want to stick to that particular point of view, regardless of what it is, so long as you have that information to back you up. But it is something that you will likely come across all day, every day.
Thank you.
Others, maybe Nick. I know everyone was kind of like at the ready. I actually am on an email chain right now with my boss, who's our EVP of marketing and growth, our chief creative officer, and our CEO in this battle right now. I was off today because I had a different event, and I read my email right before this, so I am eating the popcorn as I watch their differing opinions unfold on the email chain. So it's interesting to watch in real time. Of course, we all live it, but I am on the outside looking in of this one, luckily. But Nick, I would love to hear from you on this.
Yeah, just real quick. I guess the two thoughts that I have is that, obviously hierarchy usually plays a role at times. And I know Jordan just even mentioned, when you have like an SVP of sales and CEO, calling the shots, it's kind of hard to disagree with them to an extent. But I guess in my career, two things that usually bode quite well if you have a differing opinion is trying to make it collaborative in a sense where, usually there's a couple good ideas or maybe a couple bad ideas and just trying to navigate that from a collaborative standpoint. I think that that's important. And then sometimes I think about the fact that usually the numbers don't lie. So if you have something that you believe in and there are quantitative results to support some of that positioning, sometimes presenting like hard data usually can present yourself in a more meaningful manner as well. So I think about numbers and I think about collaborative when I think about differing opinions when it comes to decision making.
I might add, like an old school guy told me to basically make the idea the other person's idea. I don't really know how to do that because you guys have now gotten used to me. I have pretty much my ideas, but if you can figure out your idea, but give it to someone else and they think it's their idea, you're gonna win. I have not been able to sort of do that, but I know people who do that and they're really good. So maybe you could practice now.
Yes, I would say particularly for management that definitely works very well.
I was just going to build on that too and double down on the agency comment. I've worked at three different agency holding companies, and I just think the way that agencies are structured, you're inherently working across multiple different teams and people. And I think this is where it goes down to like the human connection part of it again is getting to understand how people like to get information. There's nothing wrong with asking, how do you like to get information? Understanding people's styles. How do they, conduct themselves in meetings? Are there certain styles that might be better? So just kind of getting to know the people that you're working with, their individual styles, and then sort of catering to that. But also, to Nick's point, taking a data-driven approach, I think always helps. So having data to back you up, getting to know people as people so you can kind of adjust your communication skills and style, not to compromise who you are, but just to maybe help with getting your message across, I think has been helpful. And I really did kind of learn a lot of that on the agency side because of the amount of teams and people and clients and different angles people were in within that setup.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, I know we are very much nearing time, and I believe it's like 80 degrees still in Baltimore, and the sun is, it's not dark out yet. So I want to be respectful of the students' time because I can very vividly remember those evenings at Loyola when it's just getting warm outside. You guys probably have some cherry blossoms that are happening, and I don't know if they still do it's probably like in an hour and a half, you have a couple dollars sushi that you could go get. At least that's what I would do at 9 o'clock at night. So maybe if that's the case, go run and get that. So thank you all to our panelists for all of your insight and your words of wisdom for this afternoon. We very, very much appreciate it. I know I'm walking away with quite a bit, so I hope the students are as well. Professors, thank you for your time. Of course, Krista and the rest of the board who put this all together. And we look forward to, some of us will be on campus in just 2 weeks, and next week we'll be on campus. So definitely reach out. And I believe they're sharing our names and our LinkedIn's with you. So of course, we're always here. I'm speaking for everyone that we can answer questions, review resumes, whatever it is that you would like us to do. We're more than happy to support in that way.
Thank you so much, Jordan. This is a wonderful panel. And I had several students who weren't able to make it, and I told them we're going to record it. And so I hope that's okay with all the panelists, and we're going to give it out to all of our seniors. And yeah, this is a wonderful, wonderful panel. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Krista, any final words?
Thank you all.
So thank you.
No,
Have a
thank
great
you
night.
all for joining today.
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Bye,
Take care.
everyone.
Thanks all.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Does everyone have fun plans for Easter?